Story is a bit less complicated, far less controversial, and a fair bit more entertaining, as today we are talking about the Selati railway scandal, a corruption scandal so ridiculous it almost sounds like a film. So, naturally it involves a host of international characters, mainly two French bankers living in Belgium, copious sums of money that vanished, a Belgian lawyer and construction agent, almost the entire Volksraad being implicated, and for good measure a British railway construction company. Now, as with any good scandal involving elected officials, there was a good amount of bribery involving government officials and senior positions being handed to politically connected individuals, as well as books being cooked and well done, a publicly floated company in Belgium, and suspiciously complicated accounting structures, which would all come crashing down and nearly take the dream of the Sabi Game Reserve with it. However, in the end, the Selati Railway would become crucial to the proclamation and success of Kruger National Park. To explain the Selati railway scandal, though, we first need to ask why anyone thought a railway through a protected area was necessary in the first place. And like always, the answer is money in the form of gold. Gold would be found in the hills near the Selati River in the Murchison Range by exploring prospectors James Sutherland, Edward Button, George Parsons, and Thomas Lachlan, after being led there by German geologist Karl Mausch, who believed there to be gold in the hills. Then, as in line with government regulations at the time, the men reported their discovery to the Transvaal government, who dispatched a government official to determine if the gold was viable. The answer was yes, there was enough gold and the area was workable. Following on from the government approval, a public notice of the gold discovery was issued. A gold rush then duly ensued to an inhospitable wild landscape, where only a small town was established to support the gold miners, with very limited trade route access and supplies running out constantly. Two French bankers living in Belgium, the Oppenheim brothers, would get wind of the gold rush suspiciously fast and saw an opportunity to make money by setting up a railway to assist the gold miners in better trade route access and a better supply route. They would apply to Paul Kruger's Transvaal government to build a new private railway from Komatipoort to the Selati goldfields, which would be connected to the existing line from the Witwatersrand to Delagoa Bay in Lorenzo Marques, nowadays Maputo Bay in Maputo. Their request would somehow be granted by the very anti-foreigner Volksraad, with support from Paul Kruger. The way the concession for the railway would end up with the Oppenheim brothers is that it was originally granted to Baron J. Forster in 1890, who would then sell the concession to the Oppenheim brothers in 1892 with full government approval, and another member of the Volksraad, Paul Marx, would be appointed as chairman of the Selati Company, the local subsidiary of the company the Oppenheim brothers had floated to investors back in Belgium. Along with all of this, there was a healthy dose of bribes, including to Paul Kruger, to ensure that things ran smoothly and the necessary outcomes could be guaranteed. Louis Warnant, who was the brother of the Oppenheim's lawyer at the time, would earn the contract to build the 308 kilometers of railway at the maximum stipulated cost on the 9th of June 1892. He would then proceed to farm the contract out to Westwood and Winby, a British rail construction company, and in the process made a profit of £500,000 for the Oppenheim brothers, as he was secretly acting as their agent. At the same time as all of this, the whole project was being financed by the Transvaal government. Westwood and Winby would complete 120 kilometers of track to Sabi Bridge before running out of money when things started to collapse. The scandal of all the corruption and, let's say, interesting accounting practices and business practices would break in 1895 at the hand of J.S. Smith, the Railways Commissioner at the time, who would begin to investigate the whole affair and stop the contract. As a result of all this, there was a number of lawsuits and countersuits in Brussels between the Oppenheims, the Transvaal government, and the investors who the Oppenheims had floated to the company to, at a significant overvaluation, of course. At the same time, also, as all of this, the workers who hadn't been paid got wind of the scandal and downed tools, then left. As a result, hundreds of implements and huge stockpiles of material were left abandoned in the Lowveld. In the end of the whole affair, the Oppenheim brothers would spend 3 years in jail in Brussels. The entire Volksraad and Transvaal government were revealed to be corrupt and greedy in the process, becoming a laughingstock of the financial sector. This was because the Transvaal government had spent £1 million in 1890s, roughly equivalent to a little under £117 million in today's money, for 120 kilometers of track that was functionally useless and went nowhere. Yet depending on your view of the world, unsurprisingly, no member of the Volksraad or government would face any consequences for their role in the whole affair. During the years before construction would resume on the railway to complete it, Stephenson Hamilton and his team would use the track and manual pump trolleys to fetch supplies from Komati Point and bring them back to Salisbury Bridge. So I think it's unfair to say the track was completely useless. However, it was undeniably a fantastic white elephant at the time and a major embarrassment which many people wished would just disappear under the couch cushions. Work would eventually restart in 1909 and the line would be completed in 1912, this time on budget and within timeline. And as discussed in earlier videos, SA Railways under the Rovos Rail banner would then commence the Round in 9 tour in 1923. The tour was crucial to the success of the proclamation efforts of Kruger National Park, as the artwork posters to promote the tour created public support for the idea of a national park, and it was the Round in 9 tour that had first brought a group of ministers, including Deneys Rates, to the park. In time, the railway line would prove to be a huge success, as at its peak in the 1960s, around 250 trains per week shunted through the park, carrying tourists and freight. However, to no one's surprise, the trains would end up killing a large number of animals, and as a result, it was decided that a better option was to build a new line along the western boundary of the park, which would result in the Selati line having its last train thunder down the tracks through the Kruger National Park in 1973. Some 50 years after the first Round in 9 tour began. Now, as always, I hope you learned something today, or at the very least were entertained, and I'll catch you on the other side.